If they leave, and help them pack.
They didn't know what divorce was.
No, not everybody's meant to be married. Nobody told you how to say I'm getting a divorce. So how did you tell the kids?
We're
going.
And I'm Dina Blair.
We're single moms.
Living life for the first time, just like our kids.
Real talk from the carpool to the crib.
A podcast about single motherhood,
Black womanhood,
and everything in between.
And maybe we can make your way in the pickup line a little more bearable.
Hey everyone, welcome to the pickup line. My name is Dina. I'm here with my girl Maury. You're on the pickup line with us. Today we have an interesting topic. We're talking about communication 101 and having tough conversations with our kids. And this actually came about because Maury and I were talking with my youngest daughter the other day, and we got on the topic of divorce. And she started sharing with me about some ways she thought that my ex and I could have handled the divorce a little bit better. So I'd like to share some of those, a little bit of that conversation with all of you, and hopefully share some insight on how, if you're going through this, you can actually walk away with some tips that could make it more of an easy process for you and your family.
I mean, I'm not sure. Well, I've never been married. I can only bring up during my childhood, but I'm sure there's no easy way to go about getting divorced other than having transparency with your kids. And I would think that in that transparency, it would kind of limit some of the adult factors that happened in the relationship that caused the divorce. I'm not sure about that, but I think being open and honest with your kids is probably the best solution to that, because it's I don't think you get married to get divorced. We said that in the last episode, but I think that if you communicate the fact that the relationship isn't the same, which a child can see, you're not holding hands.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that too, because in my mind, I thought I was communicating it. So it's so interesting to be able to have that conversation with her and her say, we didn't know what was going on.
Why did you think you were communicating that?
I felt like it was maybe obvious that things are going on. And I think what I would have done differently, well, not think, I know what I would have done differently is like all of us sit down and say, hey, this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. So having an open communication with your children, regardless of the age. Well, I shouldn't say that. The age definitely does matter. So I was super intentional. Like I wanted to wait until my girls were older, and I thought that there would be a better understanding of what was happening. And
so does that mean you saw the divorce coming yourself, and you were going to just wait it out?
Yeah. So I sensed it was a strong possibility. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I was like, well, if this is going to happen, I definitely want to wait. So I think what I could have done better is the four of us could have sat down and said, hey, this is what's happening. Not, I think this is what's going to happen, because I think that would send more confusion. But once you know that you're actually going to be separating or divorcing for mm-hmm. sure, sit down with the children if it's age appropriate, and let them know what's going on. Obviously, a 2-year-old isn't going to be able to understand that. But once your kid is like 6 or 5, or maybe even 4, I think it's important to sit down and say, this is what's happening, and reassuring them that your mom and dad love you, that this is not your fault. And we did that.
Yes.
We definitely did that. But I also think we did it a little bit further down the line. I think while we were going through the divorce, it would have been helpful to actually sit down and have had that conversation and say, mom and dad love you. This is not about, anything that you guys have done wrong. And being able to, have a conversation where they felt loved and seen, mm-hmm. and that they were in a space where they could ask questions.
Yeah, divorce is just on the rise in general. And I'm sure we've seen this, the statistics say that it's really on the rise with 50 and up. People that are empty nesters are just coming home and deciding they don't want to be married anymore. So I can only imagine how hard it is as a child. I can't really speak to that because my kid's father has, he lived with my son longer than he lived with my daughters, and they don't know any different.
Right.
Because he traveled so much. So they don't know any different. They just know that he was around, but he didn't live with us. And I can only imagine how hard that is and how difficult that is, because you can see the romance fizzling out in any relationship. And I think that the kids can see it as well. Like, I think the kids know that, this isn't the same. We're not laughing the same. Things aren't the same. And I just, when I was growing up, I wish somebody would have told me, and nobody did tell me. And I think that it is only fair for the kids to know that this is a beginning to an end.
And how unfair for the children to have to process that on their own. Like looking back, I'm thinking, man, how unfair for my girls to have to try and figure that out, because they didn't, and they said this, like, they didn't know what divorce was. It wasn't something that they knew. They just knew all of a sudden dad was there, and then dad wasn't there as much.
But I don't think that children are as naive as we want to lead them to be. I think that kids know exactly what's going on. I think that there's a fear that they don't want to deal with the reality of what is happening. And what's happening is a separation. And in any separation, there's grieving. And I think that the kids want to avoid, or their senses basically say to them, this isn't happening, because, we all want to avoid grief. And a divorce is a death. It's a death of a marriage, right?
And a family. It could feel like a divorce, a death of a family too, your family unit.
Yeah. And so I think that, it's hard, it's difficult, but I think that we have to give our kids more credit, because kids hear things, kids see things, kids know when mom's not happy, kids know when dad's not around and he's not happy. Kids know from the conversations, or we think we're closing the door and they don't hear the argument, but they do.
They do.
They hear a lot of it.
Yeah, they definitely do. I think they know things are different, but they don't necessarily know what that's leading to.
Correct.
A divorce. They know, like, hey, mom and dad used to laugh a little bit more, or we would do movie night on Fridays, and now it's just, me and my sister and my mom, so they see the shift, but I don't think they understand. And my girls even said, they're like, I just thought dad was just working more. They just thought they knew it was different in their mind. They were rationalizing, well,
which I'm sure
he's just
some people do use that as an excuse. Oh, your dad's at work. Oh, your dad's not here. Because as a mom, you do what you feel like you have to do to protect the kid. But in hindsight, now that they're older, was it really protecting them?
That's right.
Right. I guess it wasn't protecting them. So it wasn't protecting me when I was younger. But my kids, they don't know. Like, they'll tell you, they like we don't. I mean, we don't know what it's like for him to be here.
Right.
Because he had a job that made him travel all the time, and he and I weren't in a relationship, so they didn't experience that part of it. Maybe my son experienced a little bit of the breakup and the moving of homes, but I think that when kids are younger, it's more difficult, because then there comes the time sharing at one place or the other place. And I think that when kids are older, some of them just already know and expect it.
Yeah, I think when they're older, they're mature enough to be able to process the emotions a little bit better, and maybe not necessarily think that it's something that they did.
So how did you tell the kids?
That's a great question. I think I probably blocked that out because it's so, like, kind of hard to think about. My oldest daughter will say that I told her on the way, like, home from school. I just let them know that their dad and I were getting divorced. So I certainly think it should have been a more thoughtful conversation, but I also think that the space that I was in, I just wanted to just, like, get through it. Just the fact that I can't exactly remember how I told them lets me know I was just in a space where I just want to get through this. I just want to get through this and move on to the next thing. And so that's something I would say, anyone out there that's going through that, just, like, be super sensitive to how your children are feeling. Like, yeah, you're feeling a certain way, and I certainly was, but that should have been kind of pushed aside, and my focus should have been more on, like, how are my kids dealing with this? Because I'm resilient, right? I'm grown, and they're not.
Well, you're still a human being. Even the strongest warrior falls at some point. Like, it's it's love. It's a heartbreak, and it's the disintegration of a family. So it's okay to have felt that way. It's okay to have felt like, I don't. I mean, you probably don't even remember how it happened. Like, right? You probably it's trauma. Like,
it's definitely
it's trauma.
Yeah, it's definitely trauma.
It's trauma, and a lot of times when you hide or try to hold in traumatizing feelings, they come out in a different way. So you probably wouldn't have been able to express how you really felt to your kids at that time anyway, because there was so many mixed emotions. There was bitterness, there was anger, there was resentment, there was, I can't believe you did this shit, or there was, I'm mad at you, or there's like tons of ways you're feeling, and you're only human. So you got to give yourself some grace in that period, because nobody told you how to say I'm getting a divorce. Like,
yeah,
right?
I mean,
You didn't get a handbook.
It was a process, right? It wasn't like I woke up and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to get divorced today. Like, I'm
Right.
just not dealing with this anymore. It wasn't like that at all. It was certainly like years and years,
And as a single mother, you're trying to hold it together for them. And you probably haven't gotten it all out yourself. Right? Like, so you hadn't even dealt with your own feelings.
Right.
Because you were too busy dealing with theirs. I have a girlfriend right now. Her mom has dementia. Her father passed. She hasn't been able to grieve her father because she's too busy trying to help her mother. So it will be the same case with you and the girls. It's like you haven't grieved the marriage. You haven't went through your feelings, and you haven't gotten out how you really felt, because you went into supermom mode. Like, right? It was just like you put on your cape and you had to turn into supermom. So it's okay that you couldn't have really good conversations with them. And that's like the purpose of the show, to help somebody try to figure out how to navigate through their thing. Because nobody sat down and said, hey, Dina, tell your kids this is what you do, and gave you an outline on how to get divorced.
Well, you just feel yourself. For me, I felt myself really just wanting to keep things as normal as possible, even though he wasn't at home with us.
You know, they knew it wasn't normal, right?
Well, yeah, I know.
At that time, you probably didn't.
They knew it wasn't normal, because it wasn't normal. But I wanted to keep what I could keep normal, like the routines, trying to keep the routines as normal as possible. Because I pretty much, took them to school and all that kind of stuff. But there were other shifts that had to happen. But I tried to keep that as normal as possible, because I felt like, the divorce was already such a big shift. So things that I could actually keep stable, I felt like, and I still believe that, like, I wouldn't have changed that. I would have wanted to keep things as the things that I could keep stable, keep them stable, which is, you and I talked about me, redoing the house and selling the house and moving someplace and starting fresh. And so that was like, you know what, that might be one of the things I want to keep stable.
I think for kids, home is a safe space. It's their home. I think that if your kids can't come home and feel welcomed and feel safe, and I tell my daughters this all the time, and my son, I don't care what happens in your life, you can always come home.
A soft place to land.
You can come home.
Yeah.
And I want them to feel comfortable with being able to come home and being able to communicate with me. I'm the type of mother that I'm not, if they're going through something that's crazy, I'm not going to be the one, I'm not going to protect them if they're wrong. Now, if you tell me you're wrong, I'll help you. I'll figure it out. But I'm not going to hide you from your mishaps. I am going to navigate you through them. And I think that when you're going through a divorce, or when I was going through a breakup with D, it wasn't the prettiest thing on the planet. It just wasn't. Right? It wasn't. It was, months of preparing him for, I'm going to make a decision. And when I make the decision, it's done. We worked it out. We tried to do it back again and get it back together and work it out. And then we just became co-parents. And that's the healthiest thing for him. And the communication is, he's not always here, and he doesn't always come, but when he does, he gets the respect that he's due. Right? I don't really know. I've never really talked about this with my kids. Like, we've never, because they don't know any different.
Right.
They don't know any different.
Yeah. I think that it's to be expected when you have children with someone. And I mean, obviously it happens when you don't have children, but when you have children with someone, you do try, because we went through the same thing. Like, it was whatever, 2008 or 9 or whatever it was. And it was like, I don't know if we're going to do this. And then, okay, no, we're going to stick it out. And then a few more years go by and it's like, so it's like you want it to work, and for me, I had that picture, that family picture that I had in my mind that I wanted. So that kind of kept me pushing forward to try and make it work. But then you get to the point where you're just like,
it doesn't work.
It's not working.
I mean,
it's not working, and that's
and
okay.
To thy own self be true. Like it's okay. I mean, not everybody's meant to, not everybody's meant to be married. Not everybody's meant to, be a Stepford wife. Not everybody's meant for that. Like it's just, and one day I would love to be married, but I want a healthy marriage. Like, right? We could all want to be married. We can all get 17 rings, but you want a healthy marriage. You want a marriage that brings the best out of you and your children. And I just think that you have to, if the marriage is dissolving, let your kids know. Let them know. Because if they figure it out for themselves, they're going to figure out a whole lot more for themselves. They're going to figure out, they're going to want to know what happened, who did what, when it happened, who did who, what
they do,
who was wrong, who wasn't wrong, why did it happen? And there's going to be some anger from those kids from that. And part of that anger is going to be that y'all didn't tell me.
Well, yeah, that, and I would say as a parent going through it, is like, don't let your kids get in the middle of it. Like having open conversations with your kids is so important, but don't let your kids, don't vent to your children.
Okay, but when you say don't let your kids get in the middle of it, how do you avoid it?
Well,
because they're going to ask you a question, and I don't think they should be in the middle of the nastiness, but they're in the middle of the transitional period.
No, that part is yes. That part is yes. To have that conversation. That's what I'm saying. I wish I would have been a little bit, I would have been more, this is what's happening. This is what's, because kids like to know what to expect, right. So I think it's important to set that, but keep them out of it in a sense, like if it gets ugly, because it does get ugly. It doesn't matter. I feel like it gets ugly at some point it doesn't matter who it is. People that I know have gotten divorced or they've had children with someone. It's like, oh, we're just going to be, a nice, easy. I don't know one person that's it's been like that for. Maybe there's someone out there. I don't know. But if that's the case, so you've got to still have that conversation with the other adult. Don't air that dirty laundry to your children.
Correct.
Right.
I think
and so true. I think that's one thing I didn't do, which I think is helpful. I really, really did my best to not say anything negative about their father to them.
Because again, they'll see that on their own.
And it's still their father.
If it's something negative that a child needs to see, because people have to understand that parents are human beings too. Just because you father a child or you birth a baby, it doesn't make you not human. The baby doesn't come out and all of a sudden you're like Christ-like. Like it doesn't happen that way. Right. It doesn't happen like, okay, I just had a baby and now I'm perfect. Right. We all want to say, oh, I just had a baby and I'm going to act a little different. Well, we're not. You're still who you are. Yeah. Right. You're still who you are. And you would hope that the child helps you grow up a little more. But when you're dealing with different personalities, when you're dealing with people that are narcissists, or you're dealing with people with, abandonment issues, and have that, people have trauma in their lives and they have issues in their lives. If you don't handle and fix yourself, you're still going to be that person as a parent. You're not going to become a parent because you had a baby. It's if you were doing this before the baby, you're going to damn sure be doing it after the baby, unless you go figure out yourself and figure out how to get help to be a better person. And that's what happens with a lot of kids, is they inherit the parents' dreams and the parents' trauma and the parents' drama and what didn't happen, or the way I was raised. And it's a whole different generation. Like it's a whole different time. We've got technology, we've got the internet. It ain't the way you was raised. Now, I do agree with manners being kept the same, but I think that we have to be a little different when raising our kids now because we're dealing with a whole different beast.
Yeah. The other thing to remember too is if you're saying something negative about the other parent in a divorce, is you have to remember those kids are 50-50. You know, they're part the mom and part the dad. So if you're saying things negative about the other parent, that child can internalize that as that's them
And
too.
I will guarantee you 100%. We said this in another episode. The kids are going to tell. They're going to tell. Like they are going to tell. It doesn't matter if their loyalty is with mom or if their loyalty is with dad. If it comes out in anger, if it comes out in kindness, they're telling because they have so much built up in them and probably resentment and anger and grief on their house dispersing that they're telling it all. They're telling it
and they
all.
probably don't even it's just all coming out too. I think just like as a child you have all this emotion that's inside of you. It just comes out, and it can come out all different ways. It may come out where they're saying, you know, well, he said this or she said that. It can come out, they may react in school. You know, I think that's also a good point to make sure, like, if you are going through divorce, like to let the school know, like if you have a trusted source at the school, like for us, we had like the chaplain at the school, like we could talk to, and so they knew that this was happening. So if they saw any behavior that was out of, you know, out of the norm for my girls, and you know, we could have a conversation about it. So, but it comes out in ways that you don't even expect, and it may not even be that week or that month.
It may not.
It may be a year later, or you know,
could be
or years later.
Looking up on social media. It could be different friends that they're getting with, and you know, I was so blessed in my situation to have a village of dads that are good dads around my kids. A lot of my neighbors are still married, and those dads have helped me with my kids tremendously. I mean, it's been a safe space for me as well, because the one thing that I am grateful for is they've got to see amazing examples of dads and husbands. That is one thing that I will say, that, you know, some of my friends have been in the longest lasting relationships that I've seen, and they still hold hands with their wives. And we were just talking about, one of my friends said, "Oh yeah, I met my husband in the library." We're like, "The library?" And I'm really grateful for that, right? But when we talk like amongst friends and we have conversations, you know, my kids might ask them those questions. They're like, "Well, we don't know what that's like, or we don't know how." And I'm glad they're comfortable with asking them questions like, "Well, your dad's doing this with you?" And then they're like, "Yeah, my dad's going to shop with me. My dad, like, one of my neighbors went and had a tattoo with his daughter." And my daughter was like, "Really?" And it's like, "Yeah, but she's getting it out. She's communicating like, I can't believe your dad went and got a tattoo with you." And I think that communication is healthy because it helps get out feelings, whether they're good or bad.
And putting your children in different scenarios to where they can see that it's not just like what they're experiencing. And then having, like you said, that open communication, because these are friends of the family and people that you trust, but letting your kids see different scenarios that are not necessarily like what they're experiencing. Because I feel like that, because I was raised by a single mom, right? So for me, seeing other families that had the mom and the dad, that planted the seed in me that that was possible.
Yes, it is possible.
Right.
It is possible. And the thing about a failed relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a friendship, again, sometimes people are in your life for a season or a reason. And if God intended that person to stay in your life, they wouldn't have left. Like TD Jakes always says, tell them bye. If they leave, and help them pack, because then that's not what God has for you. And that's what people need to understand. Should you stay in the relationship and it's an unhappy relationship? What does that do to your child? That's not good. Should you tell them the truth? Maybe not all the truth, but you tell them that, you know, hey, this relationship's dissolving. We are, you know, not in a perfect space. I don't think it's good to tell your kids you're getting a divorce like around their birthday, or, you know, when they're graduating, or when, you know, it's a holiday. Pick a good time to tell your kids. If you can tell them together, that's even better, because then it looks like a united front on saying, hey, we're just going to dissolve this partnership or whatever it is. But I don't think that you should tell them like before they're going to bed so they can dream about it and have nightmares about how their house is going to be. I think that you should pick a good time to have a conversation with your child and say, you know what, mom and dad are going in two different directions, but that doesn't mean we don't love you. And this isn't your fault. But sometimes people fall in and out of love, because it's better than waiting till you're 50 in an empty nester and saying, hey, I'm out. If you don't like me, just go ahead and leave. Just go ahead and leave. Do me the favor and go ahead and leave.
Yeah, I just don't think there's an ideal, perfect time to actually have a divorce. Like, you know, as far as the age of the kids, you know, I thought there would be, but there's just not an ideal time. I guess developmentally for the children, there might be an ideal time, and a child psychologist could probably speak to that. I just don't think, you know, you can think the kids are 2 and they won't really know any different, or they're young, they won't know any different, or they're in elementary school, and you know, we can have a conversation about it, or we'll wait till they graduate from high school and now we can, you know, they're mature and they can understand it. There's just, it's still breaking up a family unit. There's no ideal time to do
But
that.
I will say this, you know, kids are resilient and they bounce back. And I think if you tell them before it gets so bitter and so bad and so to the point where the two parents can't stand being with one another and they leave on common terms, it helps everybody. I think staying in a volatile, unhealthy, unsound relationship doesn't serve anybody.
I agree with that.
I think that the healthiest and most mature thing that you can do is be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and say, hey, you know what? We've tried, it's not working. And I mean, you can't put a big foot in a little shoe. You just
well,
can't.
I mean, be honest with yourself, and then age appropriate, be honest with your children and have that conversation. Like once you know the direction that it's going, to have that conversation with your children so they know what's happening, and that they know they're in a safe space to ask questions and have their concerns met, answered, and just creating a space for open conversation.
And for me, I'm a much better mom when I'm happy. Like I'm a much better mom when I'm happy. When I'm fun and I'm like energetic and like things are good, I'm just a much better mom. Like I think when people are happy, they're much better people.
Yeah.
And we've got enough going on in this world today that our kids don't need to be in all the drama. Like if it's not working, it ain't working. It's just not working, right? Because divorce is divorce. Whether it's a right person or a wrong person, it doesn't matter. Divorce is divorce. It's an ugly head rearing, but the kids do not have to be collateral damage in that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I would say the main takeaways, right, is like definitely have the conversations with your kids, be open so they can have those conversations with you. And it's okay to want to be happy.
100%.
It's okay to want to be happy.
100%. Mm-hmm. I choose happiness with my kids in a single family home than emotional distress in a tormented marriage.
Turmoil.
Yeah,
absolutely. Keeping this topic in mind as far as divorce and communicating with your children and all these challenging topics that are happening in our world, especially right now, we'd love to hear from you. Like, what would you like to share with us, or what would you like to hear more about?
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Pickup Line.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch us.
And listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.